welcome and thank you everyone for joining us at Funeral Innovations. In these videos, we are going to chat with industry leaders to discuss marketing trends, technology innovations, and really just discuss how digital marketing helps you better serve your families. I'm Megan and I'm a Client Success Manager here at Funeral Innovations.
And my name's Heather and I am the Director of Marketing.
So today we have our first very special guest here with us today. We have Starlyn Aurit and Jason Harrell from Harrell Funeral Home in Austin, Texas. So we're going to talk about some really cool things that they've been doing to help serve families during this pandemic. So all of us know that with the coronavirus pandemic, it's really reshaped how we interact with one another and how it's changed our business recently. But it hasn't changed the fact that we have that basic human need to grieve a lost loved one. So since we work with so many different funeral homes, we have the opportunity to see what firms across the country are doing, how they're adapting and serving their communities during this current crisis. So that's why we asked Jason and Starlyn here today to join us, because we see them come up with lots of creative ways to meet their mission of helping families during one of the hardest times when they're grieving a lost loved one. So again, thank you, Jason and Starlyn, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Of course.
So we've been doing Grief Share for a while. It's one of the many programs that we offer from a grieving perspective. Some of the other programs that we offer that are not necessarily something we'll cover in detail, but we partner with the Dominic Group, and they have a grief platform that's online that offers grief courses and also access to counselors for at any time of day. And I think that it's an incredible tool that if you're not using, that you should maybe look into, because they're expanding their online courses, and the way the courses are set up, you can actually go through them and search by topic and really just dive in deep where you want. But Grief Share, I think, do you want to talk about Grief Share? Because we've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, it's Grief Shares. It's a wonderful program that has steps and that you go through different meetings, and so with our environment changing and needing a way for people to go through the grief process in a virtual manner, since the way that we interact with people it's different today than it has been in the past. So setting this up virtually and allowing people to still grieve is very important to our mission and how we walk with families through the time of grief, and to not let these barriers and restrictions be something that's going to make us just step back and wait. Grief can't wait. I mean, it needs to continue. People need to continue to go down that pathway. So Grief Share has been a wonderful program to do that.
Yeah, and so what we've seen in the past is we've offered Grief Share, and we've partnered with churches and organizations around the community so that people can go attend a session. And a session consists of being hooked up with a pastor or a counselor, and they host a time where people watch a video, and then they have a lot of discussion time to connect. And so and then we also host some in addition to that, where some of our staff lead them. And so what we found recently is that people were finishing up some of the Grief Share sessions, and with all the uncertainty in the environment that we're in, there was really a lot of anxiety, and we even saw people that were normally going to counseling in addition to these sessions. They were really crying out and asking, hey, can you keep going, because I really need this. And so that's why we said, okay, we're going to take an online finish up. And I don't know how familiar you are with Grief Share, but normally people go through them more than one time. So there's 12 sessions, and a lot of times by the time people get through the 12 sessions, they're just now opening up and connecting with the people around them, and they're at a different point in the grief cycle. So they really can go through it again and they can get a lot more out of it because they're in a different process, as going through the grief. And so by going online, it just allows those same communities to stay connected and to go through it, one or two times, as many times as they need. And then by partnering with other organizations throughout the community that host Grief Share, we can then get the news out and people can go to multiple programs. It just depends on which one they want to, when it's starting and when it's available.
So you've basically moved your in-person grief shares to a virtual meeting. How is that working for people?
So it's just starting really and rolling out. They've only had, we've got one group that is finishing up. So they had already established relationships in a physical realm. And then we've got another group that's just starting, and so far it's going well. And then we have another group that's going to start in a couple of weeks. So we're kind of on the beginning side of it. But I know Grief Share, the organization as a whole, they're rolling this out all over the United States to try to provide an environment that can be online. In Austin, there's only a couple so far, so we're just in the beginning stages of it. But I can tell you from hosting another small group online, we had only met 3 times in person, face to face, and then we took the meetings online over the last couple of weeks, and they've been fantastic. I mean, just because you're in an online environment versus a physical environment, we have not really seen any barriers to being able to connect and go to a deep level.
That's great to hear.
And I do think by taking it virtual does give an opportunity for more people to engage. I think they may be more comfortable in their home setting. Now there is a little bit of the hill of technology that an elderly person may need to get over, but once set up, I think they're able to engage more confidently, and so just having that ability, I think that's some of the silver linings that we see through this is people can still connect, that they may be able to open up and share a little better too. So those are some positives.
Yeah, and we also we've seen in the past where some people may be hindered from coming because they can't drive at dark. It's dark and they can't see in the night, and so they can't drive and come. And so now, as long as I think that we provide them the information ahead of time and they can get a family member to help set it up, and it's super easy. All I have to do is click on a link and it opens up, then it's going to enable more people to join. And especially as we move into the fall, right? Because we don't know, we're just starting to open back up in the Austin market. And in fact, tomorrow is the day that the governor's allowed us to start holding more people with funerals. And so, but there's all this talk about in the fall with the flu and COVID maybe coming back. And so we want to really try to provide a stable option so that people can have a way to continue the grieving process, through the fall in case something does happen and it started limiting, because that would be horrible if they started going through the process and then all of a sudden it was cut off and they didn't have any way to connect. So
yes, so it sounds like it's worked as a temporary situation for right now, but you're finding it might be useful to carry into the future
yes,
for people. Great. Megan, go ahead.
Because the whole entire industry is changing. I mean, we all know that through us now starting to live stream services like that's not going to just stop in the future. People expect to be able to have that capability. Well, I think you're about to see the same thing play out in the grief realm and also in the pre-need planning realm. We're now gearing up to hold our first pre-planning seminar that's going to happen not next Tuesday, but the next one. So in 2 weeks. And what we've seen in the test piloting of getting ready for that is that online and live is really important. People want a way to engage. They want a way to interact, to talk, and to meet in a safe environment while they stay at home. So we're about to start rolling those out. And I think that you'll continue to see those things moving forward. They're not just going to stop when people start going back to, attending events.
That's terrific. Megan, do you have any other questions about the Grief Share program?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, Starlyn and Jason, as people are going to continue moving their events to online, whether, you know, we have this pandemic or it gets a little bit more back to normal. Can you talk about some tips that you would have for different funeral homes and directors as they move any of their events onto an online platforms? What are some of the best practices that you've seen that have helped you guys so far?
I guess with best practices that we've seen in this ever changing days that we live in right now, you know, it's just there's a transition to just being online. Just you know, it's virtual, and just our arrangement process with families. From the initial onset of us coming in contact with the family, it's you know, it moves from telephone to possible video conferencing, and then when you're talking about the visitation or the service, we've seen Zoom be helpful in those. Facebook Live for streaming to the public, family and friends. When we're reduced to only having 10 people in on a funeral service, you do have to look for those options for others to because the grieving doesn't stop, and just because our society does. So when this allows us, you know, the video conferencing does allow us to utilize technology to allow folks to continue to go down that path of healing, and so other things that our conversations are a lot more. I guess team meetings, our staff, we're having to, I've seen an improvement in our communication with our staff. So we've got, since everything's continually changing, we have to be in front of that. So having you know, more frequent huddles with the staff and that communication, so we can better serve our families. Those are some things that.
And I would also throw in, like, anticipating change and problems. Like, so it's a learning process for everyone. And sometimes we get comfortable in our environment because we're like, okay, we finally mastered how, you know, what we need to do to set up and how to make this technology work like it's supposed to. But then just keeping in mind the customer and the demographic of a lot of the customers that we serve. I mean, we were face streaming a service live the other night, and I spent an hour on the phone with this gentleman just trying to get him in because he wanted to be in so bad, and my heart was just breaking. Like, we tried everything, and FaceTime. Like, anyway, we tried a lot of different options, and so. But I think that problem could be been alleviated if we had been proactive to make sure the family took steps to have him set up in advance. And so, you know, the families are grieving, so we can't assume that they're thinking, you know, in all cylinders and that they're making sure everybody has access to what they need. So providing the directors with instructions and trying to help people get set up from a technology perspective in advance, and being very clear on how we communicate and how we link people to the technology. We found that through Facebook that it was hard because, you know, just because you have a hyperlink, you assume everybody knows to click that to, you know, go to a Facebook page, but a lot of people don't know that, especially elderly folks. And so we had to end up creating a button with Funeral Innovations that took them directly to the place on the Facebook page, because many of them had never done that before. So just being proactive and kind of thinking through the steps so that as many people are able to access what they need when they need.
So some of the tips and best practices I heard you guys say was be proactive, be flexible, increase your communication, be sure that you let people know ahead of time how they need to use the technology, and then use your technological resources to support both your families, and ask your vendors to help you with what you need to make that process easier for your families. Is there anything else you want to add about that before we move on?
Yeah, I think partnering with the vendors is critical. And I mean, we're all connectors here. We're trying to connect the families to what they need. And in order to do that, sometimes we're crossing platforms and partnering with whether it's people in our community or our vendors that we work with, but being proactive and if we see a need, like going after and trying to connect people.
Mm-hmm. Those are great tips. I know you mentioned change several times. One of the things we've seen a change in since the pandemic started was a change in flower sales. Shifting topics a little bit, can you tell us about the problems you were encountering or the changes you were seeing with flower sales and what you've been doing to remedy that?
Well, I do know that without a funeral service, families don't have a place to send flowers. So that does affect with the restrictions that were put on. And a lot of families decided not to even hold a funeral. So yes, there's going to be a dip in flower sales for that. And if you want to.
Yeah, so what we were brainstorming with Zach and Greg and trying to figure out how can people feel like they're connecting with the family and feel like they're helping, because for one, you have all these layers of people being isolated, right, with the restrictions and staying at home. A lot of times people weren't even with their loved ones when they died, and then they want to know how they can help, but that there's no pathway for them to even come up here and grieve. And we all know how important a funeral service is in beginning the grieving process and also helping the family feel loved and supported. So we were brainstorming what can we do, and that's when they were talking about, well, what if we did a donation tool? And so we ran it by a couple of people in the community, and they thought it was a fantastic idea. And so we've got the donation tool up and running, and so far we're not seeing that. At first we were like, well, is this going to impact flower sales, right? Because people would normally buy flowers. But what we're seeing is no, it actually complements the flower sales tool, because not everybody wanted to purchase flowers to begin with. And so if you think back to maybe when you had a baby or you had a need in your family, and you know, people would come around you and they would create a care calendar, or they would create a sign up genius, and they would go around and they were like, okay, we want to help this family. Do you want to donate a meal? Do you want to help run an errand for them? Do you want to go get groceries for them? And so we were trying to think of, well, how can we bring that to an environment that helps everyone? Like everybody has access to this tool, whether they have a friend that's going to set it up or not. And so this donation tool that has been put in place, it's really been very helpful. We've been very surprised how many people are using it, but it allows all families to have access for people to come along beside them and to love them and support them and to show them that they care, and to even leave them a very heartfelt message in there. And whereas otherwise they might not have had that opportunity, because how many times have you had somebody say, you know, when you're talking about a loss and they're like, oh, well, let me know if you need anything. Oh, well, we would love to help you. But a grieving family is not in a position to try to plan a whole pathway for the community to come along and help them. I mean, they're already trying to process through this grief, trying to process all the plans that have to take place to set up a funeral. And so having this donation tool is just a simple way that funeral homes can come along beside them and say, hey, we're here to help you. We've already set up a tool that, you know, all you need to do is you can tell your family about it. And so one thing that we've really been surprised at is the tool has been great for helping people collect money for funerals. Normally, like when a person was in need, they would have to go try to figure out how to set up a GoFundMe page or something else. But I think having this tool set up, they don't feel like that they're asking for money per se. It's just that they're able to tell somebody that it says they want to help. Oh, well, the funeral home has this way for you to donate money towards a funeral or to donate towards other things. And so what we've seen some large donations go towards funeral expenses, and it's really come at a time when the family was in a hardship, you know, position financially. And so it was a way to benefit them greatly.
Excellent. And so the donation tool that Zach and Greg worked on you with, Zach and Greg are Funeral Innovations co-founders, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know. it allows people to contribute to the funerals, but what other types of things are you seeing people make donations to?
So the tool was set up so that you could make it in a couple of different categories. So one was like food. So if you wanted, we were trying to support local businesses and restaurants so that people could go and just donate, say, hey, I want to give you $50 for this restaurant, and then the family could use it, however they wanted. The other way was like purchasing groceries, and then we had a section, or there is a section for keepsake items, and I thought that more people would donate towards that, but we haven't seen a lot of use of that area. Charity is a piece that's critical, and in fact, we see a lot of opportunity with this moving forward. We think that moving forward, if we can connect that charity button directly to charities so that when people donate, they're donating directly online to the charity organization and they can receive a tax deduction for it, that would be a huge benefit. But some people are donating to charities, and then there's an other button so that people can really be creative and say whatever they want. And we've seen a lot of people use the other button.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I would like to add to that a little bit. I was really surprised when week one when we rolled it out and those donations started coming in. Just really excited to see that interaction. There's a place there too where the families can leave a message. So excuse me. So there's a area where they can leave a message and families can see that personal touch to that donation attached to that, and folks that are giving to funerals and to that family, it's and when that check comes in and we're able to give that back to the family after the service is over, it builds greater trust, and just the fact that you're giving money back to the family. There's just a sense of just building that trust with the family.
And this is a learning process for us for sure. And so one thing that we have learned along the way is that we should tell a family, they should be able to see as we're going who's donating, because that can be so encouraging when you get an email and you're like, oh, so and so thought of us, and look, they donated $50 for whatever. And so Zach and Greg were just awesome. They went back and they changed the tool, so now as soon as somebody donates, an email goes to the family as well, so that they can be seeing all along in case somebody calls them at home and they're like, oh, did you see, they want to be able to recognize that they got the donation from them. Yeah. And so the donations are really we did learn to through this process that people usually donate up until around the day after a service happens. And so now we're just collecting those donations and getting them back to the family within a couple of days after the service, because initially we were thinking we would leave it open for about 14 days, but we're learning that really the high traffic time for people wanting to help is around the time that a funeral service is going to be. And most of the services, a lot of them that we've been doing have been private services, just because only 10 people can be present at the service. But it'll be interesting to see what happens as things open back up. Tomorrow we can have 40 people at a service here in Texas. So it'll be interesting to see if the donation tool or the support tool even increases more when people have their eyes on the tool more, looking at the services.
Right. Megan, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, so Starlyn, Jason, you've talked a lot about how this tool has helped you. What would you say would be the number one reason why you would recommend other firms to utilize an option like this donation gift giving tool?
Well, it keeps you connected with your family, especially in this time of distancing where it's hard to connect. So it's one way that keeps you connected with your family. It shows that you're putting an effort towards trying to connect as well, and trying to help others through this time. So it's just that connection.
Yeah, and I would echo that because our motto here, our tagline is "Where love lives on," and we just want to be there to love on the family, and in whatever way that is, and that looks different for every family. And so I think that this donation tool is a way for us to provide love and support for them, and it helps come along beside them, which is how our business was founded on. Jason's dad, that's why he started the whole business, was to have a friend to lean upon and to come along beside you. And so if we can come along beside them and help them financially to raise money for a funeral, or to, you know, get money for groceries, and whatever it is, we want to just be able to have a pathway to connect with them and to help them. And so this tool provides that way, and it also provides a way for people grieving. I mean, we know from the data that it's so important for the people in the community that are grieving to feel like they're connected and helping the family. And so if we can help them to be able to help the family, then that's great.
Great. Thank you both. Was there anything else that you two wanted to add?
You cut out to add?
To add that we didn't already ask you about the tool?
Oh,
I think they were.
yeah, no, I think that's about it.
Awesome. So if anyone else is interested in learning more about the donation tool, you can contact us through our Facebook Messenger page, our Facebook page, or the website through our contact form, or our email at info@funeralinnovations.com, and we can give you more information about that giving tool. So we do have one more question for both of you, for Jason and Starlyn, just to end it here. What is the most important thing you've learned while serving in this industry? So whether that's just in the past few months having to deal and adapting to the pandemic, or just your time overall while serving in the industry?
I would say that just the importance of continuing the relationship with the family, and making sure that it doesn't just end with the funeral. Our relationship should continue on. There's several things that we do throughout the year to keep families engaged. Of course, we talked about the grief share already, being one avenue that continues on with the family afterwards. But at the end of the year, we have a remembrance service as well, and that's where all of the families of loved ones that have passed on, they come together at the end of the year, and they and just have that time of remembering. It's probably the need for that is probably greater than any other time is this year, because there's been a lot of distancing that has not been allowed people to grieve properly, and just coming together to love on one another. So that is one way that just that remembrance service and allowing folks to continue to grieve and continue our connection and relationship with those families.
Yeah, and I think another opportunity to tag onto that is, if you aren't having a remembrance service, that maybe consider having something jointly in the community with hospitals or churches or first responders and other people, to bring the community together to celebrate the people who have lost loved ones this year for COVID. So we may consider doing something like that. Just because it is, like Jason said, I mean, we've seen it with our remembrance services, a lot of families that have come that just did cremations and they didn't do a service, and how meaningful. I mean, they were in tears, like, because this was their service, right? And so because of all the distancing and people not being able to say goodbye, whether you're a COVID patient family or not, I mean, there's been so many that have been in nursing homes and loved ones haven't even been allowed in. And so these kind of services are really going to be important towards the end of the year.
Mhm. Well, thank you guys so much, Starlyn and Jason. We really appreciate your time. And thanks for joining us for the interview. We'll be posting this interview on our blog, on our Facebook page. Um, if anybody who watches this has ideas for topics in the future, let us know. We will address those. Or if you know people that would like to be interviewed, submit their names and we'll check them out. We really appreciate your time and hope you guys stay well. Hope your families stay well.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate you.
You too.
Yes, thanks so much.